Are all transatlantic crossings created equal? Spoiler alert, the answer is no, but I thought we should have a look at the reasons why. So I recently saw that Norwegian Cruise Line is selling a transatlantic crossing on board its new cruise ship, the Norwegian Luna, in March of next year. And this got me thinking, what is really the difference between the transatlantic crossings of old and the modern-day transatlantic repositioning cruises? Well, transatlantic crossings in the traditional sense is a point-to-point voyage across the North Atlantic Ocean, linking Europe with the Americas. And these voyages were undertaken by ocean liners for over a century as part of the great movement of people from Europe to America, but also transporting goods across the world. Now, transatlantic crossings are direct point-to-point voyages, and because of this, the ships are designed in such a way that they can undertake the voyages regardless of the weather. And the North Atlantic is known for having some pretty rough weather at times. A transatlantic repositioning cruise is quite different. Modern-day cruise ships will often do voyages across the Atlantic when they reposition from America across to Europe or vice versa. And we often see this when a new ship has been built in European shipyards such as Fincantieri or Le Chantier de l'Atlantique and have to make their way across to America or the Caribbean for their inaugural seasons. A great way to illustrate this is the Virgin Voyages ship Scarlet Lady when she undertook her very first transatlantic repositioning cruise just before the global cruise shutdown. Now, she was built in Fincantieri and then she undertook a series of voyages in the United Kingdom with media on board and then repositioned to America, which was supposed to prepare her for her first season in service. This, of course, coincided with the global cruise shutdown due to the COVID pandemic, and after a brief period, the ship then repositioned back across the Atlantic to Europe for storage during the pandemic. But she didn't undertake the direct point-to-point crossing in the traditional sense. She sailed much further south than an ocean liner, and there's a few reasons for this. An ocean liner is designed to undertake those point-to-point voyages regardless of the weather in the quickest and most efficient way possible. Now, if you look at the world's fleet of passenger ships, there's one that stands out today, and that's the ocean liner Queen Mary 2, which is the only ship that's designed to undertake those direct point-to-point crossings in a modern context. Queen Mary 2 is designed differently from the cruise ships, allowing her to do a far more northerly voyage, time and time again, with very minimal disruption to the ship's schedule. Because of this, you'll see some aspects of the ship that are a little bit different from modern-day cruise ships. Firstly, if you look at her from the outside, she has a distinct profile. Her bow and stern are terraced, and she also has a very long bow. And this is a reinforced part of the ship with hull plating that's much thicker than you find on cruise ships, which allows her to take the beating from the North Atlantic in both summer and winter months. And she's designed to do this for over 40 years. Now, Queen Mary 2 also has a very high freeboard, which is the distance between the waterline and the first exposed deck amidships. This means that when waves are rolling past the ship, particularly in rough winter crossings, there's much less chance of them swamping the interior parts of the ship. QM2 is also very fast. She has a much higher maximum speed, which means that if she does have to slow down due to bad weather, she will most likely arrive on time because she can make up that lost time with a maximum speed of over 30 knots. Now today, Queen Mary 2 undertakes that voyage in 7 days, though she could do it in 5 if she was pushed. But if you look at modern-day cruise ships, their repositioning cruises across the Atlantic are quite often much longer, and they often take in more ports than Queen Mary 2 does. In a traditional sense, the transatlantic crossings are that direct point-to-point voyage. Now, the ocean liners of days gone by may have had more than one port call, and quite often at the beginning of the voyage, they'd go to several ports to pick up passengers and goods, but then they'd undertake that direct point-to-point crossing in the quickest and most efficient way possible, quite often on a much more northerly route than what you find on modern-day cruise ships. Once they got to America, they may well have also visited several ports to disembark passengers, and then the whole thing started again when they made the return voyage. Modern-day cruise ships, however, will often take in more ports because they'll go further south, quite often taking in ports along the west coast of Africa, or even places such as Madeira or the Canaries. These voyages will then go on a southerly route, and in some cases even calling in ports in the Caribbean on their way to their American ports of call. The weather is usually more favourable the further south you go, and therefore the cruise ships try and avoid the worst of the North Atlantic by making that more southerly route. Now, this is not to say that cruise ships can't undertake the direct point-to-point crossings, and we have seen this done before. Cunard actually sent Queen Victoria and Queen Elizabeth across the North Atlantic Ocean on that direct voyage on several occasions. But these ships, while cruise ships, were strengthened slightly to enable them to undertake these voyages with more reliability. Just recently, Queen Mary 2 and Queen Anne, the Cunard Line's newest cruise ship, were on the North Atlantic together, and it was really interesting to see how the two ships performed in the similar weather conditions. Now, this was a January crossing. Queen Anne was making her first ever transatlantic crossing, whilst Queen Mary 2 was also on the North Atlantic, where she spends much of the year. Queen Anne was heading westbound from the United Kingdom across to America, whilst Queen Mary 2 was heading eastbound in the reverse direction. Now, the weather wasn't great. It wasn't bad storms or anything, but there were quite heavy swells, and Queen Anne did struggle a bit in those kind of conditions, meaning that the ship actually arrived in port a day late. On the flip side, however, Queen Mary 2, she was sailing further north in worst weather conditions, and she actually arrived on time with very little disruption to her schedule. And this just illustrated the difference in the performance of an ocean liner versus that of a cruise ship. Now, the North Atlantic can be dangerous, particularly in bad weather conditions, and this was dramatically and tragically illustrated in 1966 when the ocean liner Michelangelo was hit by a mammoth wave that actually caused significant damage to the front of the ship. The ship's forward superstructure was designed and built with aluminium, and when the wave hit the front of the ship, it actually pushed in and broke those forward plates, tragically killing 2 of the passengers, and later a crew member also died from injuries sustained. The ship was later retrofitted with steel plating on its forward superstructure to stop that event from happening again, and this is damage that was sustained by an ocean liner that was actually designed for those weather conditions. Now, cruise ships are quite often designed with pleasure voyages in mind, which is why you rarely see cruise ship operators sending their ships on direct point-to-point crossings. Transatlantic repositioning cruises can happen for a number of reasons. Firstly, you'll often find them at the beginning of a ship's life when it's been sent from its shipyard, which is quite often in Europe, across to the Caribbean or the American and Canadian cruise market. But you'll also see it used when ships are repositioning for different voyages. So, for example, a cruise ship that's been operating in the Caribbean may reposition to the Mediterranean, and they'll often undertake that transatlantic repositioning cruise for that. So this is some of the reasons why transatlantic repositioning cruises and transatlantic crossings are quite distinct experiences and not at all the same in terms of their history, but also the purpose that the ship is undertaking those voyages for. Today, there's only one ship that does the regular point-to-point crossings, and that is Queen Mary 2, and she was designed to do that for an entire service career and undertakes those voyages many times a year. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a like, and if you have been on one of these voyages before, let us know what you thought of them in the comments below. All of the maps that you've seen in this voyage, the globe that we've been using, that's from the new app, the Cruise Globe, which is really great. It allows you to, for free, put in your cruises, and then it shows you on the map exactly how those cruises sailed, and it uses real AIS data to give you an exact routing. So it's been quite fun to play around with this new tool, which you can check out for free. I'll put a link in the description below. And if you're interested in getting a map that you can frame of your own cruise, then check out thecruisemaps.com. And this is a great new service, and if you use my promo code, which is in the link below, you'll get a discount on your cruise map. Now, that is an affiliate link, so I do get a small commission, but it does also allow you to save some money as well. So check it out. Thanks once again for watching, and until next time, I hope to see you on board.